The circulation of information in One Piece is incredibly important. Vegapunk has shown us the power one can wield when you pair a powerful message with undivided attention. So with that in mind, I thought it'd be interesting if we discussed how the news makes it around the globe, specifically focusing on how Blackbeard revolves around the news cycle and seeing if we can figure out where he might go by connecting us to his vision. So if you're new to the channel, the way I view the world is by making connections. So let me connect you to my vision, the Parvision. This video is sponsored by Aura, an all-encompassing solution that covers a password manager, VPN, antivirus, storage, and ID protection. Aura is actively monitoring my web browser, email, and phone number across the dark web, but also from leaks coming from very public companies. Recently, AT&T revealed that nearly all their customers' call and text records had been exposed in a massive data breach, and it hasn't even been a few months since they admitted over 70 million of their users' social security numbers ended up on the dark web. With Aura, you don't have to be in the dark about where your information is, because they will swiftly notify you if there's anything to worry about. And I'm sure you have experienced an increase in texts from services that you use, when in reality they're well-designed phishing attempts. Well, Aura offers an AI-powered call assistant that protects you from harmful text messages and calls by filtering out known spam numbers, scanning links, and calls, which will take a huge burden off your shoulders, but also your family's. Think about how hard it would be to teach your parents how to safely maneuver through the forever evolving digital landscape, or worse, having to help them get out of a phishing scam after they already fell victim to it. With Aura's user-friendly interface, you can track everything and finally take control of your security. Thanks to Aura, I'm not leaving my family vulnerable to data breaches, and if you want to protect your digital existence, use the link aura.com/parvision to try your first 2 weeks of Aura for free. Link is in the description, and thank you Aura for protecting my community. When we're talking about news spanning from the Reverie, Raid, and Egghead, isn't it crazy where Blackbeard fits into all of this? Blackbeard reads the news and moves by it, but it's almost like Blackbeard is underneath every headline. When he found out that the warlords were dissolved, he immediately went after Boa and kidnapped Kobe. Now, this news, while significant, would just be buried by the Reverie news, and thereafter the news about Luffy and Garp. And I say Garp separately because the news didn't directly tie Garp's situation to Blackbeard. It just said that he vanished on Pirate Island, which as a headline would have been crazier if it said that Blackbeard pirates captured Garp. Remember, Big News Morgans wants to make the craziest headlines, so why didn't he clickbait harder with this one? And that leads into the reality that this happened again with Rocky Port. The news was that Law was the mastermind and Kobe was the hero, but was the Blackbeard part undersold or blocked out? Because the reality is that Blackbeard might be the most dangerous Yonko, because while Crossguild is gaining fame and notoriety with the news, and Luffy has all the eyes on him, all of this allows Blackbeard to continuously slip under the radar or elude the news entirely. This has actually always been a Blackbeard staple in general. Oda has made it that Blackbeard always gains power in the darkness. He gained power while underneath Whitebeard's shadow, but it's not just that. Even while he was in a Yonko crew for nearly 4 decades, he had never gotten a bounty. Isn't that crazy? A pirate as strong as Blackbeard and who could harm Shanks and is in a Yonko crew having no bounty for 40 years is kind of suspicious. It seems that Blackbeard was without bounty because he masterly evades the limelight, and he only got a bounty after betraying the world government as a warlord, which further substantiates this. While Blackbeard made the headlines at Marineford, his true exploits of breaking out Impel Down level 6 was all covered up by the Gorosei. Rocky Port incident was most likely manipulated, and the fight on Amazon Lily was basically redacted to just a kidnapping story. Also, it's highly likely that the world won't even find out that Blackbeard pirates were at Egghead. But most importantly, there is no context clue or admission that Blackbeard fought Law and beat him, which is significant because this would be the only major fight in Yonko news that was not mentioned or referenced as a headline. If Morgan knew about this, then I'm sure there would be some acknowledgement, but this was the most remote fight in that it was on an uninhabited island, solely between 2 crews. And so it could be that Morgans knows and we just never saw any reference to this as a headline, or Morgans knew and didn't post it for some reason, probably indicating some connection between Morgans and Blackbeard, which would lend itself to the idea that Blackbeard gets preferential treatment. We know Luffy's news is in the headline, so is Garp's vanishment, and we know that the Kid Pirate crew's destruction is public info since Buggy references that Shanks is moving, and we see Tomorrow Black cosplaying as Kid, which would only make sense for him to do if the world knew that the Kid Pirates vanished. There is no mention of the Winner's Island Blackbeard fight except for this direct call that Akainu had, which we'll talk about another time, but it's not just Morgans who misses Blackbeard's news. Shanks' information gathering crewmate Hongo, who gathered a whole file on Kid, only knew that Blackbeard left Pirate Island, and in that time Blackbeard's crew raided Whole Cake Island for pudding, Blackbeard went to Amazon Lily personally, Winner's Island for Law, Jaw and had a major battle on his home base and completed a mission at Egghead, all while seemingly not being able to come back to Pirate Island. And though Blackbeard seems to get relegated to the shadows of the news, this has been playing to his benefit the entire story, to the point it's basically his superpower to be undefeated off screen. And so now the big question is, what will Blackbeard do after chapter 1121? If we follow all of this logic, I think we can understand that Blackbeard chases opportunities, and most importantly, the news. With the news that Big Mom left Whole Cake Island, he dispatched his crew to secure Pudding, someone with a unique race tied to the fate of the new era with a power to peer into the Void Century. Then with the news of the Warlords dissolving, he went after Boa Hancock seemingly for her power. From here, he kidnapped Kobe, went back to Pirate Island, and told Kobe that he has plans on creating a pirate kingdom and will use him as a bargaining chip to pressure the world government, specifically saying he will pose the question to the world essentially whether if Kobe was worth saving or not. But this part is huge because Blackbeard left Kobe with some of his crew and took Pudding with him. Thereafter, hearing the news of the Straw Hat Alliance winning in Wano, Blackbeard himself went to Winter's Island to ambush one of the 3 monster captains after Wano to get any of their poneglyph info. But interestingly, he brought Pudding along with him on this mission. I think he was confident in his victory, which makes Law's escape probably a huge setback in his plans, but he also probably didn't account for Garp to raid his island while he was gone. But fortunately for him, he essentially won from his angle since they traded Kobe for Garp, and from Blackbeard's angle, Garp would be much more valuable as a bargaining chip. All of that said, instead of coming back to Hachinosu after Winter's Island, it seems that once he received the news that the world government was sieging Egghead, he sent Van Augur and Katarina Devon on a separate mission that ended with Devon touching Saint Saturn. This mission is still shrouded in mysteries, and my take has been that Blackbeard tasked them with gaining a copy of the highest authority they could get to combat the Seraphims. But we can't say for certain since they just appear in front of the Gorosei and say that this was unexpected but helpful. And reiterating, this movement was made after the news was released, which solidifies this pattern of his reactive behavior. And it should be noted that the largest scoop in One Piece history just dropped via Vegapunk's message. Now that Vegapunk has hijacked the airwaves, doesn't it make sense that wherever Blackbeard is going is related to this? Now, it could be that since Blackbeard himself didn't go to Egghead and didn't return to Pirate Island, that based on the news that the world government was devoting so many resources to Egghead, that he decided to take the opportunity to raid Mare Joie, or Marineford for example. But I'm not sure why he would do that, only because he said he wanted to, at minimum, in the short run, become a kingdom affiliated with the world government. So directly antagonizing them would be counterintuitive to his plan, according to chapter 1080. So it seems like Blackbeard's original plan was something similar to Doflamingo's, in that the world government didn't antagonize Doflamingo because he held information about the national treasure that Mare Joie had. It could make sense that by having the poneglyphs, which he would have gotten if he beat Law, capturing a huge symbol for the Navy which originally was Kobe and now is Garp, and also gaining the image and voice of a Gorosei via Katarina Devon and being able to manipulate the Seraphim himself, all could be used to blackmail the world government into allowing him to become affiliated. Maybe like before, there's something in Vegapunk's actual message that would dictate where Blackbeard himself would be headed. Every single time the news has essentially been Blackbeard's log post for where he would go next, and that's when you have to recognize that there was definitely something massive in Vegapunk's message. If Blackbeard is aiming for the world, then obviously the One Piece would be important. But Vegapunk spilled the beans on a secret us readers knew and something no other Yonko would use. In the mix of the message, there was the hypothesis about the sinking world and the ancient weapons. Without Caribou though, he wouldn't really have a start to pursue the ancient weapons unless he had secret information. That being said, Vegapunk talked about the Mother Flame, which could be a target for Blackbeard, but without the context, I'm not sure if it would be as rewarding as the other thing he stated, which was that the fate of the world is dependent on the One Piece, and heavily insinuated that what the Pirate King's crew found was the purest voices of the past that contains the true history of everything that transpired during the Void Century, and reinstated that the entire crew knows of this. Now you can understand why this is huge. Before now, yeah sure, Roger's crew was hunted by the Navy, but now his crew will be sought after by the world. They have the information to everything. Before now, everyone thought it was just wealth, fame, and power. The mercenaries in Cross Guild, the reactors to Vegapunk's message, and many more instances substantiate this fact, that most thought it would be something akin to gold, which would lead to power, which would lead to fame essentially. But the truth was something the Straw Hats were already aware of. They knew from Rayleigh himself that he knew the history of the Void Century and what the treasure is. I would assume Shanks knew this too, and while Buggy knows this, I don't think any of the three would care to go back to Rayleigh and pry this information out of him. Rayleigh wouldn't even be willing. But that's where Blackbeard stands apart, no? Wouldn't it make sense that Blackbeard targets Rayleigh now? If the Navy doesn't target him, I'm sure Blackbeard would. Interestingly too, in chapter 1121, Oda structures the panels where Rayleigh is falling asleep drunk above the panel where we find out that Blackbeard is still missing. Shaki even says to Rayleigh to be careful or he'll catch a cold, and I wonder if that was a nod to the idea that Blackbeard might bring Doc Q to fight Rayleigh with the sick fruit. How ironic would it be for Rayleigh to suffer a tragic end in the hands of an illness that caused so much pain to his beloved captain, Roger. It's kind of a trope for the second hand to feel the pain of their captain, like we saw with Zoro, or more comically with Killer. Anyways, there was something about that line that Shaki said that felt ominous to me. But regardless of that, we have it that Rayleigh even stated himself that he would lose a head-to-head fight with Blackbeard right now. This was said in a way that almost felt like Oda was teasing this clash down the line. In chapter 1116, we see Rayleigh saying, "Us old folks should keep our secrets. We shouldn't rob the young ones of their fun." And when you think of a character who is a threat to the new era and destroys the old folks, it's Blackbeard. I mean, how fitting would it be for Blackbeard to have essentially killed Ace, has Garp captured, and then Rayleigh too? That would be Luffy's brother, guardian, and mentor. All of them would be used to bargain with the world government. And just a reminder, while Rayleigh obviously wouldn't be compliant, it doesn't matter since Blackbeard has Pudding to extract the memories. It's actually because Oda had Blackbeard bringing Pudding along on this trip that makes all of this more believable that whatever Blackbeard's end goal is will be a target of Pudding's power. This move would catapult Blackbeard from 3rd place to the man closest to holding the fate of the world in his hands. All it would take is Silver's Rayleigh, the Dark King, falling to Blackbeard, the Dark Emperor. We know that Luffy would not care to ruin his journey by asking Rayleigh, and if Shanks wanted to, I'm sure he could have. But yet we see Shanks instead pursuing the road poneglyphs, which I only think he did because he didn't want to give Blackbeard any other opportunities to get the rubbings. And to clarify, we aren't sure that the poneglyphs that Law had were given to Blackbeard, but considering that would have been a massive deal, I'm sure Oda would have shown it to us just like he did when Shanks paused his massacre to get the poneglyph rubbings from the Kid Pirates. That would mean that Shanks and Luffy are the closest ones to the One Piece, but if Blackbeard lost out on the 3 poneglyphs, but then found a shortcut to the One Piece, then wouldn't he take that? And you might be wondering, well, if Rayleigh was that valuable to Blackbeard, why didn't he just fight him on Amazon Lily? Even Rayleigh thought he would lose. While there could be many answers to this, I think it's pretty reasonable to just say that at the time, Rayleigh's value wasn't as much of a priority as it is right now. And as Garp puts it, it would take a massive force to take Rayleigh down even now. Because Blackbeard wasn't planning on fighting Rayleigh, he wasn't going to push his luck. The situation was messy as is. Blackbeard was primarily there to prevent Boa's fruit from falling into the world government's hands. He also needed to free his crewmates, and his plan was to ambush one of the captains after Wano thereafter. So why would he waste his energy and jeopardize his crew for Rayleigh, when at the time Blackbeard seemingly might not have known the truth about the One Piece being historical? On top of that, his plan was already to get the poneglyphs from a somewhat easier target than Rayleigh. And also at the time on Amazon Lily, he wouldn't have had Pudding yet, but now he does. So now everything has changed. Blackbeard can now create a plan to capture Rayleigh for multiple reasons. Blackbeard said he is gathering bargaining chips to negotiate with the world government to become affiliated. So the right hand of the Pirate King is obviously valuable, but much more so after Vegapunk's message. Because of the message, instead of just wealth, fame, and power, now Roger and his crew are complicit in covering up not just the history of the world, but the likelihood of a global catastrophe that would transpire and kill many, if not billions around the world. It's not just about getting a bounty or finding the One Piece. The literal fate of the world is at risk here. Which means that right now, whether it be a pirate, a kingdom, a bounty hunter, or even marines who want to prevent disaster, whether for humanity's sake or for their own sake, should be searching for Rayleigh. I did consider that Crocus was at risk, but being in Laboon and just all around less known probably makes him safe. But going back to Rayleigh, not only does Rayleigh make sense as a target, but the path does as well. If you were to think that he got Caribou already and is on his way to get the ancient weapons, then Fishman Island is on the way to Sabaody. On top of that, Blackbeard knows because of the siege on Egghead that the Navy won't have much activity on the other side of the Grand Line. To drive the narrative home as well, Blackbeard was the one who killed Whitebeard, the goal of the world government during the Paramount War, and as a result, he claimed to have ended an era and now began his. And now that he has Garp, he can end the old era of the Navy, and if he takes Rayleigh, he would be wiping the Pirate King's era all in one go. It would make a lot of sense that with these bargaining chips that Blackbeard successfully negotiates his entry into the world government, with the notion that he is doing the world government a favor by safeguarding the One Piece and making them think he isn't interested, thus forcing a similar situation he created in the past. If we were to say that Blackbeard's ultimate goal after getting the Yami Yami no Mi and creating his own crew was to take down Whitebeard, get his power and his territory, everything before that was all set up for that moment. Becoming a warlord was just a means to gain access to Impel Down to bolster his forces. In order to become a warlord, he captured someone linked to the previous pirate king. So right now, he would have two of them, Monkey D. Garp, and if he gets Rayleigh, they would substitute Ace. If the goal this time is to become Pirate King of his own nation and get the One Piece, thus naming his own era, then obviously becoming a part of the world government would be a parallel to becoming a warlord. That being said, that's where this discussion ends for now, since I think it's still a little difficult to understand what Blackbeard's current pathway to government affiliation will be used for. He used the warlord status for the access it granted him, so you'd think something similar for him wanting the world government status, but at the moment it's too hard to pin down the specific purpose other than if what Van Augur told Saturn was true, and if Blackbeard is ultimately aiming for the world, then naturally, as Vegapunk said, the One Piece is crucial, regardless of the Blackbeard Kingdom ploy. And as Vegapunk also said, the people who already have the access to the keys to the fate of the world are the Pirate King's crew. I think we all should be on our toes when it comes to Rayleigh, and we should be praying that I'm wrong here, because Rayleigh is one of my favorite characters, and I'd hate to see him fall to Blackbeard. But if Blackbeard is as dastardly as I think he is, then he will be taking down the Dark King. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this and the ideas you had. I definitely like the idea that he's going towards Wano or Fisherman Island, but there's something about the setup with Rayleigh that has me scared. And now that Vegapunk has put a target on his back, I think you should be keeping your eyes on him. If you enjoyed keeping your eyes on this video and listening to the vision, like the video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And so, like always, thank you for connecting with me, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you all on the next Parvision.